We're back to the Neil Haley Show here on the Total Celebrity segment. And when I think about Pittsburgh, I love talking to Pittsburghers, and especially somebody that, has that, Pittsburgh work ethic and his amazing story of recovery. And I'm excited to welcome to the program Brian Cuban, author of The Ambulance Chaser and many other books, and the younger brother of Mark Cuban. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Exactly. So let's just go right to it. Growing up in Pittsburgh, how, even though you've gone through some challenges, you're very successful yourself as an attorney in your career and different things and your successes. What do you think had it so that in the Cuban household, success was one thing that looked like both of you guys were going towards?
It was the work ethic our father instilled. Our late father was a veteran of the Pacific, greatest generation, was on during the Battle of Okinawa. He was a CB and then fought in Korea. And he and his brother, Marty, owned what's called a trim shop. They reupholstered seats and they put on convertible tops, and it was on West Liberty Avenue on Auto Row in Dormont.
Okay.
And they had that trim shop, just hard working class guys from the end of the Korean War until his brother Marty passed away in 1999. And then Mark became, famous, and my father retired. But it was just that day-to-day work ethic. Our father wanted us to do better, wanted us to exceed what he did, and he made sure that we all understand that these were the steps you have to take. And he made us understand that nothing was going to be given to us.
So growing up, what kind of lifestyle did you guys live? Middle class lifestyle?
Middle class. I was born in St. Clair Hospital in Scott Township.
Okay.
But we lived in Birdland on Meadow Laurel Drive in Scott Township. And then in 1970, we took the step up to Mount Lebanon. And that was December 11th, 1970. I remember the day we moved. And we lived there until I went on to college, then law school, and then moved to Dallas. My mom still lives in the house we grew up in.
So talking about Mount Lebanon, so that's a step up from where you were. And so was that still a middle class?
You got in Mount Lebanon, you have to remember you have different, there are the people who live in Virginia Manor.
Exactly.
And there are the people who live in other places that might not have as much. So we were still I would say middle to upper middle class. Not to say that's not privilege, right? Because
Right.
It is. But we were certainly not living in Virginia Manor.
Okay. And you get that school district. Did you guys both go to Mount Lebanon, you and Mark?
Yes, all three of us, and Jeff as well.
Oh, Jeff too. Okay. So let's kind of go into specifically what your work ethic, like you learned it from your father. So who was a harder worker, you or Mark? Who would you say?
I would say in the balance, Mark. Mark's always had the mindset of there's always going to be someone trying to outwork you, right? And there's always someone trying to take your client, so you have to work harder than them. I remember Mark didn't take, he's very public about how he didn't take a vacation for 7 years. Let me give you a great story about how it worked. So when I first moved to Dallas, I hadn't passed the Texas bar, and I didn't have a job. Mark said, "You'll come work for me. We're very close, and that's just the way we are."
Yeah.
That's what we were taught. And so he had a company called Micro Solutions, and it was one of the first computer consulting companies in the country. So, and this was 1987, 687. So I go to show, I put on, I'm this lawyer who hasn't passed the bar yet, right? My ego. I put on my suit and tie that I'd owned since my dad got it for me at Sears in high school. This briefcase that was empty, and I show up at Micro Solutions. He looks me up and down. He says, "Go home, put on your rattiest jeans and shirt, come back here. You're working in shipping and receiving."
Oh, wow.
There are no lawyers here. There are only people who want to get rich, right? You learn the business like everyone else and get rid of that stupid briefcase. And so that's the mentality. And it took me a while to get there. I think I've certainly taken that viewpoint later in my life, but I would say in the balance, Mark certainly has been a harder worker than I am.
And so that's crazy to know that 7 years did not take a vacation. So he ultimately understood those specific things. So let's talk about you now. And specifically, you go on to be a lawyer. So it sounds like Mark's take on lawyers is interesting, right? What is his take on lawyers, Mark? At that
Well,
point?
there's another story. I always have a story.
Good. I love it. See, that's Pittsburghers. We
Yeah,
always
well,
have stories.
So
Yeah,
it was 98 or 99 when the Pittsburghs, what was it, Marino went bankrupt, right? EMC,
yes,
and he put the Penguins into bankruptcy. And
exactly.
so the Penguins were in dire danger of moving to Canada, being moved to Canada.
I remember that. Yeah.
So this was the time Mark was starting to get very well known. He had just sold AudioNet to Broadcast.com and become a billionaire.
Yeah, that was
But
a
at
big
this-
deal. I know that story. That's an amazing story. For sure.
Yes, so he was a paper billionaire at that point. It hadn't
Right.
vested yet.
Yeah.
So people would start sending me all these ideas and business pitches. It's like I'm Mark's, vetter. And I just send them on to Mark and you get no, no, no. And then my law school roommate, Mark Hake from Pitt Law, he knew some people involved in the Penguins deal. And so
Right.
he sent me this email saying, would your brother have any interest in getting involved? Mario Lemieux's trying to buy the team, blah, 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 blah. And I forwarded on expecting a no. And Mark, I get an email back. Well, who do you know? Oh, okay. So we're getting started here. And before I know it, I'm staying in a hotel in Pittsburgh, the William, at that time it wasn't the Omni, but the William Penn,
Yeah.
for a week or two. And we're having all these meetings. And I remember Chuck Greenberg and Bob Pietragala and in Pittsburgh, and Mario Lemieux and the late Sam Rich. And we're having all of these meetings, and Mark's interested in putting in a certain amount of money in the team.
Right.
So things are percolating up and boiling. And then it gets to the point where Mark is going to meet personally with Mario at Mario's house, where it might have been in Fox Chapel or wherever. But so Mark and I drive, and he didn't let me go to the meeting. He says, you wait. And I waited in a Brugger's Bagels, and this was before the era of the smartphone. So I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, waiting for this meeting. And so we get back, and Mark's all excited, and he's on the phone talking about having the first tranche of the investment wired in. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to be the general manager of the Penguins. Not really, but I'm thinking Mark's buying the team. So we go home, we were staying at the William Penn, and the Penguins were playing, I believe it was the New Jersey Devils that night in the playoffs.
Okay.
So we all went out, we went to the game, and we rented a limo, and we drove around Pittsburgh, to all the bars. And I went home the next day, and Mark went home separately. And I didn't hear anything from him. And this is a long way to get to the lawyer thing. But then a couple of days later, it came out that he wasn't going to do it, and he wasn't going to get in on the deal.
Right.
So the public statement was that there weren't enough business people and too many lawyers in the room. and when you think about it, there were a lot of lawyers in that room. Myself, Bob Pietragala, Chuck Greenberg, Mark Hake. And so the only one who wasn't a lawyer in that room, I think, was Mario.
Wow. So that's an interesting story. And a lot of times you don't know those backstories about lawyers and those things. So then you start your career as a lawyer. What led to the addiction? Specifically
growing up, that's a great question. Growing up in Mount Lebanon, I was an overweight kid, and I was bullied severely at Mount Lebanon High School. And this was in the mid to late 70s, and bullying at that time was brick and mortar, right? There was no internet.
Right.
I was fat teased, fat taunted. And in my freshman year, it was around my freshman year at Lebo, my brother Mark, and I know it always comes back around to Mark, but we're very close and we did things together. But he was very into the disco scene. And this was right when Saturday Night Fever was about to come out. And around 1976 to 77, when disco was really starting to get going, and they had the disco clubs in downtown Pittsburgh. And he had this pair of shiny gold bell-bottom disco pants, and he gave them to me. And Mark wasn't a big guy. These pants, I had to jump up and down, spray the water bottle. My butt looked like 15 cats back there. And but I didn't care because I love my brother and I wore them. And I'm walking home from school one day with these kids. It's my freshman year, and they're making fun of the pants, fat teasing me and taunting me. And they physically assaulted me.
Oh, no.
And they tore the pants off along Bower Hill Road, and down to my Fruit of the Loom tighty whities, my Pittsburgh Pirate t-shirt, my tube socks, and my kids' tennis shoes, and threw them out in the street. They started pulling at them, and then it was kind of like rabid dogs, right? First you start pulling, it tears, and then they're all pulling, and it was a physical assault. And they went on high-fiving like they'd done the funniest thing ever. And I walked out into Bower Hill Road, very busy street, and in Mount Lebanon, and runs through all the way up to Cochrane Road, and kind of covered up my tighty whities and waddled home. And I got home and that house was empty. And I waddled down our wooden steps to the basement. And I remember it. It was, the steps creaked, and with every creak, I felt like the whole world knew my shame, right? And knew what had happened to me. I got into that basement and I buried the pants, the shreds, in a wastebasket, and hoping that that would bury my shame. But that's not how trauma works. And that was kind of the beginning. And there was more to it than that one incident. I was a very shy kid. I was very withdrawn. Classic middle child syndrome, needing of acceptance. And it was kind of a perfect storm. And so there were other elements going on, but that was kind of the linchpin in how I started to see myself as this fat pig, as I'd been called so many times, and this unlovable monster who would never have a date, never kiss a girl, never hold a girl's hand, never be loved. And I also had a bit of a difficult relationship with my mother, but I don't blame her for any of this. I don't want people to think there's parent blaming here. Cause and correlation are two different things.
Right.
But and so there was some trauma, and I could go to that spot today and show you exactly where it happened.
Wow.
And I never told anyone for decades. And so that I started seeing just this horrific reflection in the mirror, and began cycling through all these destructive behaviors to see something different.
Right.
But the image never changed. First, it was an eating disorder. I suffered from bulimia. Guys do get eating disorders. Then came alcohol. Then came the cocaine. And then in 2005, my first of 2 trips to a psychiatric hospital after a near suicide attempt, when my brothers came in and I had a .45 automatic on my nightstand. And then 3 failed marriages, all failing because of drugs and alcohol. I was arrested. And then lost my practice of law, and literally, and here's where privilege comes in again. Mark was supporting me because I was a mess and I had no way of earning a living. And then finally, in 2007, after a drug and alcohol induced 2-day blackout, I realized I was going to die if I didn't get my life together, and I began my recovery journey.
Oh, wow. And what was I saw one of the things that you ended up selling your Mavs.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Go ahead.
That was in 2006 when my 20th year as a practicing lawyer. In 2006, when the Mavs were going to the NBA championship for the very first time. So as you might imagine, I was going to get some good seats, right?
Right.
So I also got some tickets for friends. I got 2 tickets. I didn't give them to my friends. I told Mark they were for friends. I sold them to my cocaine dealer for $1,000 in cocaine. And so so my cocaine dealer shows up at my house. He gives me the cocaine. I give him the tickets. I go running up to my home office, this giant oak desk, and I dump all the cocaine out of this baggie, like this little mountain, looking at it like a Scarface. I wanted to go and rub my nose in it. And so I lined some out with a $1 bill. And cocaine users, we're an ironic bunch. You go to the bathroom, you wash your hands. In pandemic times, you'll sanitize your hands, but we'll stick a $1 bill up our nose that's been used by God knows who, and has God knows what on it. Go figure. But at that point, cocaine had long stopped giving me the feelings that I achieved that allowed me to be the person I thought I should be. And now it was just pain and paranoia. I thought I heard the cops outside. I'm peeking out the window, and there's no one out there, but now I'm all paranoid. And I hide the cocaine. I drive to a home improvement store where I buy electrical faceplate outlets, a drill, and a saw. I drive back to my house. I go to the closets, to the drywall upstairs with the drill and a saw, cut it out, and create these fake electrical outlets, put the cocaine in smaller Ziploc baggies, hide it behind all these fake electrical outlets, close it up, thinking I'm the smartest lawyer ever.
Right.
Like the DEA, the cops, and the drug dogs have never thought of that before.
Right.
Now, I do some more, and again, just pain and shame. And I'm all paranoid again. An hour passes. I go to those same electrical outlets. I take out the cocaine, put it back in the same Ziploc baggie, go to my master bathroom and flush it down the toilet. Now it's $900 worth of cocaine because I did some.
Right.
So the next morning comes. I wake up. What? Did I? Nah, I didn't do that. Did I? Yeah, I did. I flushed all my cocaine down the toilet. There's another game tonight. I call up Mark. I get 2 more tickets. My dealer shows up at my house. He said, dude, you did all that last night? I don't want to say I flushed it down the toilet like a moron. I
Right.
said, yes, I did it all. Okay, dude. Gives me another giant Ziploc baggie. I give him 2 more tickets. I go running up to my home office, rinse, wash, repeat, dump it out on the desk again, one more time, do a couple more lines. But I mean, and it was never an epiphany that I might have a problem.
Right.
It was always, well, maybe I need a new dealer, or maybe I need to change out the Grey Goose for the Jack Daniels. And the paranoia came again. Back to the electrical outlets, bzz, 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 hide them again, hide the coat baggies again, take it back out again. About an hour or so later, go back to that same bathroom, like I'd done so many times before, drop to my knees, hoping or praying for something or someone to take away the pain and shame of my life and addiction, and flushed it down the toilet again.
Oh my God.
They say when Dallas flushes, it runs downhill to Houston. So maybe some people in Houston had a little hop in their steps those 2 nights.
Wow. Okay. So when you finally did, this is the thing. How do people go from, making these mistakes and knowing their addiction and then finally go to rehab and recover? Because a lot of them don't recover.
They don't. We
I
had
know.
100,000 fatal overdoses last year. But a lot of that was fentanyl too. But a lot of them don't. And I didn't go to treatment. I recovered in 12-step.
Oh, 12 to
I refused to go to treatment. I refused to go to treatment. I was much too important a lawyer with no cases to go to treatment. It was an interesting time. But recovery is not a straight line for pretty much anyone, right? You have steps forward, you have steps backwards. But I ask people when I speak, I do a lot of speaking. When I speak, I ask people to answer a question. What is the one prerequisite to recovery? And I'll get answers like you have to want it, you can't recover if you don't want it. No, be alive. That is the only prerequisite to recovery, be above ground. And some people don't stay above ground, but I was fortunate and it could have gone the other way. That's why I feel so fortunate that I'm alive today, because I was mixing cocaine with alcohol. I was mixing cocaine with Valium. My heart easily could have stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, easily. So I feel very fortunate to be alive.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. And it's like, the be alive and hopefully be doing what you want to do in life. Because again, addiction kept you from that success of losing your practice and everything. So after recovering, you basically did you continue to practice as a lawyer after that?
No, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law. I was a criminal justice major. I wanted to be a cop at Penn State. That would have worked out well.
Right.
I'd have been the first guy in the evidence room trading up a baby accident for the blow.
Yeah.
Believe me. But I didn't want to be a lawyer. You know why I went to law school? Because law school was 3 years, and I could spend 3 years drinking because I was already an alcoholic when I went to Pitt Law. I was still binging and purging because I had an eating disorder. And I was also running 10 to 20 miles a day because the only time I felt okay is when I was by myself out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's called exercise bulimia. And so as I found recovery and began to be able to evaluate my future for the first time with a clear head, right? It had gone from just surviving moment to moment to recovering moment to moment. And as I began to recover moment to moment, one step at a time, I began to figure out what my strengths really were and what I truly loved. And that was writing, that was speaking, that was sharing my experience, strength, and hope to give other people that hope that recovery is possible. Just stay alive.
Right. So you moved away from that. So is it more of an entrepreneurial mindset with your speaking, writing, and all that stuff? Or how did you okay, I'm not going to practice, be a lawyer anymore. I'm going to go on to this where I'm going to speak, tell my story of addiction, how I overcame addiction. I write books as you are. We're going to talk about your books soon.
Sure.
And go out and do that. Did you make that a business in a way? How did you kind of put that together to what
that was also an evolution. I wrote my first book, my very first book, which was self-published, was called Shattered Image. And it was purely about my struggles with body image and eating disorders. And it got a lot of publicity because of my last name, frankly, and because I'm a guy going public with an eating disorder. And all of a sudden, all these people are reaching out to me to speak. I had no public speaking experience, none. And so I started going to Rotaries clubs and Lions clubs to practice.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Just practice my art. You get a free lunch or a free breakfast, and no one really cares if you mess up. So I started doing that. Then all of a sudden I'm speaking at Penn State, I'm speaking at Pitt, and I had become fairly well known on the college speaking circuit for eating disorders and body image, because it was very unusual for a guy, especially with a known name, to be out there. And that started the process of public speaking, perfecting my art as a public speaker. Then I wrote The Addicted Lawyer, which was more of a pure memoir about my overall life experience. And then that was very well, that got a lot of notice in the legal profession. And that really transitioned to my primary profession as a keynote speaker, speaking at law firms. I do a lot of big law, AM law firms, conferences all over the country and in Canada. So it was a progression.
Right. And so that's what you do. So you're a professional speaker and write. That's
an author and an author. But of course, with the pandemic, the keynote speaking industry collapsed, right?
Yes.
Unless, other than maybe in tech where they're more used to virtual. But for mental health and nonprofit, it just collapsed. So it was obviously, not to make light of it, but the very tiny silver lining for me was that it gave me a chance to finish The Ambulance Chaser.
Okay, so let's talk about The Ambulance Chaser and the storyline of it. And again, it takes place in Pittsburgh. So tell us.
It does, and there was never any doubt. The Ambulance Chaser is about a Pittsburgh personal injury lawyer who finds himself accused of the murder of a high school classmate 30 years prior, after her remains are discovered in a vacant lot in the Hill District.
Oh, wow.
He is arrested and charged with her murder, and he flees, becoming a fugitive, to find the one person who can prove his innocence and save the life of his abducted son.
See, I love the storyline, but you can't give anything more away. It's just like on the edge of my. Do you want to put this into maybe a movie someday or something?
I'd love somebody to offer to do it as a screenplay, but yeah, I mean, it's Pittsburgh is a very underrepresented city when it comes to fiction, right? And novels, and certainly crime novels and legal thrillers. I mean, you have The Mysteries of Pittsburgh, and you have The Perks of Being a Wallflower, but there are very few, and especially not legal thrillers. So I really never had any question that it would be set there. And I really wanted to pay tribute to the city in a way too. The Cathedral of Learning is in there. The Incline is a very important part of the book. So the Hill District, and a lot of it mirrors parts of my life, as you might expect. Jason, the protagonist, struggles with drugs and alcohol. Jason's father struggles with dementia, as my father did. So there are aspects that mirror my life, and you're right what you know. My grandparents and my mom lived in the Hill District projects before going to East Liberty and then to Squirrel Hill, kind of the routes. And so there are aspects.
That sounds great to have those landmarks, and people, as I say, live in other cities, but always are from Pittsburgh. So there is a definite opportunity, your memoir, but now this, to really market to Pittsburghers. Think of the Pittsburgh dad, right? How amazing that's going, Yeah,
what was funny is, I won't give too much away, but I couldn't believe that Pittsburghers are saying they never heard of the Pittsburgh version of the Mile High Club, because there's a bit of that in the book. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's having sex on the incline.
I did not know that. And so you've done it. You've done it.
No, I have not done it. But no, I have not done it. But people in law school had done it.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So people don't know that, and it's like, wow. I guess maybe those people in law school were lying, but I
don't know. That would be an interesting one, and it's such a breathtaking place. But I've been on the incline, but we have to be late at night, right? For sure.
Yeah. It has to be.
It's always packed.
Yeah, it had to be late at night, but I mean, maybe they were just bragging and it wasn't true, but
hey, it's a good story, storytellers in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
We always tell stories, yeah.
Yeah, so of course, a lot of the book is fictionalized, but there are a lot of good Pittsburgh landmarks, and I think there's a good Pittsburgh flavor. There's a underlying Jewish tone, so there's a lot of that in there, and so that's really what it's about.
So what do you think? So what's new with you? What are you back speaking again because of COVID?
For 22, my speaking schedule is filling in a lot.
That's great.
I've done quite a bit of virtual stuff, but I'm ready to get back out on the stage. I am already at work on the sequel to The Ambulance Chaser.
Well, that's great. So has the feedback gone very well so far with the book? And
yeah, so far, it launched Tuesday. It's already sold close to 3,000 books, including pre-orders. So I'm told that for a debut fiction author, That's a very good launch.
That is a really good launch.
So
And
I'm very happy about that.
yeah. And so you're going to go more that direction of creating characters and writing that way than after pushing, getting the memoir out and then stories of the eating disorder. You're really looking at writing fiction novels, it sounds like. Is that?
Yeah. How many times can I tell my own story? Right. So
No,
now,
you'll tell it every time you go on stage. That's when you
that's
do it.
right. That's right. How many times can I write about my own story?
Yeah.
But so yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking at this as a trilogy.
That's fantastic. And then after that, who knows what you're going to write about? One place that I interview authors all the time is the Miami Book Fair every year. I don't go to the Miami Book Fair. I do it virtually. And it's amazing to see these authors that have written 20 of the books on the same character. So you never know.
I don't know. I don't know. You know what? I didn't know the characters in the ambulance chaser, whether it's the villain Trent or the protagonist Jason or his Allegheny DA ex-wife, Jason's Allegheny County DA ex-wife. They all ended up doing and saying things near the, as the book evolved that I didn't envision them doing and saying when I began their timeline and journey. So fiction writing is just such a fascinating process.
Exactly. So what does Mark think of the book? Has he read it yet?
Yeah, he gave it a review and he's been helping me push it. And I have a little bit of privilege there too. I have a brother with a huge social media following that's very close and loves me and has been helping me promote it.
That's great. All right. So any other new things with you? I know you do a lot of work with recovery, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of work with recovery. My recovery journey has been through 12-step. And for those who don't know, the most well-known is AA, but there are others, right? So I do a lot of speaking, whether it's, I do a lot of just pro bono speaking at homeless shelters, men's homes, and places like that. And I just like paying it forward, right? There's a Kabbalistic Jewish saying called Tikkun Olam. It means changing the world with acts of kindness. And that is always my mission first above all else, to stay in recovery and then to change the world with acts of kindness, my little part of the world.
See, I like how that you're doing that. That's the mission that people are going to want to help out and different things. So Brian, best place, books available everywhere, right?
Books available everywhere. It may not have filtered into the book and mortar Barnes and Nobles yet, but it will. But it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, Target online, anywhere you can find it online. It's available. Your indie bookstore, you can get it.
And best place to connect to you, Mark. I mean, Brian, is where to go? Where should we go?
www.briancuban.com, Brian with an I.
All right, Brian, appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. It was amazing and great catching up with Pittsburgh stories. I want to read the book just to think about those Pittsburgh landmarks and never knew about the incline.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh version of the Maha Club. That's right.
People are going to say that. So appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.